I just want to make sure you can hear and see me okay.
Yes, we can.
Thanks so much.
Good afternoon. Can you all see and hear me?
Yes, I can see and hear you.
Thank you.
How about here?
Yes.
Thank you.
ARG.
Good afternoon. It's 2 p.m. it's 1 p.m. on Wednesday, July 29th, 2026. We're back on the record in 25AL-0538G, the Public Service Company of Colorado gas rate case. Mr. Manchel, any preliminary matters?
Just a small one related to the Keystone project, line extension derivation. We do have some material in box.com. That's hearing exhibit 163 that we could upload for the record. That's a public attachment, a confidential attachment, and a confidential executable attachment. And also, to extent there are commission questions about the materials, we would just note that Mr. Ray Gardner does have availability between the time of 2:30 and 4 if the commission wanted to bring him back up.
Let me just see if there's any objections. I know I've seen those documents. I assume the parties have. Is that right, Mr. Manchel?
We did file them in e-filing today, so they were available for the parties to review. They were not separately emailed to the parties. So,
okay. And I know
kind of-
e-filings had some problems. So maybe we'll hold off on admitting them. Commissioner Gilman, did you have questions for Mr. Gardner?
I do have questions for Mr. Gardner. They cannot be public, so we can just show the public version. And so if we need to question him between 2:30 and 4, I think it's fine for me to wait to admit it until then to give the parties a little bit of time.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Manchel? Ms. Vitale?
Good afternoon. I wanted to enter the appearance of one of my colleagues due to an unexpected conflict. I may have to leave a bit early this afternoon. The CEO witness has already been waived, so I don't anticipate anything will be needed at the Energy Office, but in case anything is, my colleague Jackie Colicchio will be attending the afternoon or the end of the afternoon portion of the hearing.
No worries. So notice. Thanks. I hope everything's okay. Mr. Judd.
Morning, all. How are you? Good afternoon now. Good afternoon. I just wanted to follow up with our constellation witness, Mr. Russo. We heard that Mr. Manchild's waived cross from the company of Mr. Russo. We just didn't know if the commissioners had any questions for him later today.
Commissioner Plant,
I do not.
Commissioner Gilman.
I do not.
I do not either. I guess you've answered our questions in the quas, even if you didn't get all your questions answered. Thank you, Mr. Judd. Anything else?
No, so with that, can Mr. Russo be excused for the rest of the day?
Yes, Mr. Russo is excused from the hearing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other preliminary issues before we call Mr. Rivera-Lugo? Mr. Rivera-Lugo, I'm interested to see whether you have the same shirt and tie and suit on. And
Yes,
pin.
sir.
Can you hold up your right hand by the pen? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You can put your hand down. Is anybody with you or communicating with you in any way?
No, sir.
If that changes, will you let us know?
Sure, I will.
Back to you, Mr. Cox.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Rivera-Lugo.
Good afternoon.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
My name is Luis Rivera Lugo, Luisrivera-Lugo.
By whom are you employed and what is your title?
I'm employed by the Public Utilities Commission of Colorado, and my title is Rate Financial Analyst.
Did you cause to be filed in this proceeding answer testimony, including attachments marked as hearing exhibit 501?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera-Lugo is available for commissioner questions.
Commissioner Gilman.
Hi, Mr. Rivera-Lugo. Sorry to make you wear a tie 2 days in a row. Especially, I'm sure the weather is hot. Just a couple questions for you, primarily on cost of removal and depreciation rates related to that, and a bit into the asset retirement obligation as well. So I will say, I'm going to ask you some questions primarily about your positions in your answer testimony. I do understand that staff is now party to the settlement agreement. You had argued for, I believe, reclassifying some of the cost of removal depreciation expense that is in, that is kind of being booked and accumulated. Can you just talk me through to make sure I'm grasping the concept that you were suggesting in your answer testimony on what you were suggesting for that reclassification and what functional kind of purpose that would serve?
Sure. Let's go back to 2022, when staff first recommended a $15 million of accelerated depreciation. And in that proceeding, the 2022 case, what we were addressing was the risk of stranded assets due to the statutory greenhouse gases legislation, right? And let me be clear. One thing is accelerating depreciation, and another thing is increasing depreciation. Both accelerating depreciation increases, but not all increases in depreciation are accelerated depreciation. And what I mean by that is that
Mr. Rivera-Lugo, can you keep your voice up, please?
Oh, yeah. When you now you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
you're
Okay.
You're good.
What I mean is that when you want to address the risk of stranded asset, the only measure that you can take is increasing depreciation, right? Accelerating depreciation, but by shortening the asset's life. When you increase depreciation, not accelerate, when you increase depreciation by adding more cost of removal component of the depreciation, you're not accelerating anything. And that was in 2022 staff's main concern.
Can I ask you a clarification?
Yes.
And one of the reasons that doesn't reduce your stranded asset risk is because they're booked in two separate accounts. So the cost of removal account, or
accumulated depreciation is only one account, has two components, life and cost of removal, right? So if you reclass from one to the other, it has no effect. But it offers us the opportunity to shorten less than 5 years of life if we move the reclassification. And then we also had in the next proceeding, we had the concern of the cash availability, right? The core is free cash, right? And it's already collected, pre-funded, and there's no guarantee. And that's been expressed by the commission that when the moment comes, the funds will be available, right? That's another point that is addressed. And that's why the 75 million that I proposed leaving as a base layer was not arbitrary, was really based on the $15 million that in experience, in 5 or 10 years experience, we've been averaging actual cost of removal. And why 75 million? Because 5 years, which is also by commission instruction, the period in which the fund is not going to be dispersing, only accumulating, is 5 years. It's the same amount. So it was not arbitrary leaving 75 million and reclassifying the rest. But the issue is that it solves the stranded risk asset, and it eliminates the negative rate base also risk, which was also another concern of the commission, with no effect on rates because it's a reclassification. Oh, we reclass in excess, we can turn it back. If it turns out that the actual cost of removal are increasing, they already collected them. We are just reclass to address the actual risk, stranded asset risk. Again, when you increase cost of removal accrual, you're not accelerating depreciation. You are increasing depreciation, but you're not accelerating anything. So this risk of stranded assets still exists. Is the settlement inconsistent with my answer testimony? A question I'm asking myself. No, it is a compromise. And believe me, the rebuttal case moved substantially toward interveners, and the direction of movement confirmed that the litigation pressure created by the answer testimony, including mine, was there. And I would say that the settlement's financial architecture reflects substantial movement towards staff answer K, and that's why, even though my main recommendation is not adopted, I still approve the settlement.
Okay, understood. I just wanted to ask you a couple questions about this distinction between the asset retirement obligation that's reported in the SEC filings and then what we see for the cost of removal being collected in actuality and customer rates. And those are pretty different magnitudes in terms of the expectation of the cost of retirement of the system. And as I understand it, there's a few things. First, they take different views about how, like, the speed and chunkiness, I guess, of that retirement in terms of how much might be retired at once. There also might be a difference in standards and practices from what they actually are versus what's in ARO. So this paints two pretty starkly different views of what it may cost to decommission the system. And I was just curious how to square those different visions. I think in your answer testimony, you had said that because of some of the state policy changes, it's getting increasingly more likely that we may tend to the larger retirement scenario. So anyway, just wanted to get your take on the difference in those values and if you see us tending more toward one or the other in actuality.
Well, I would say that the ARO engineering study, dismantling study that they do, that turned out at 1.1 billion cost of removal for the whole system, which the depreciation consultant characterized as a conservative company estimate. It's materially different from the almost $5 billion that we are heading to accruing at the present rates. And that's why my belief is that, again, we are not suggesting any disallowance. We are just not considering that it's necessary to pre-fund these funds. And when two company estimates of the same event diverge this widely, staff believes that the prudent rate-making response is to stop prepaying at the higher estimate until the range narrows. We have $500 million of already pre-funded cost of removal, and plus, and that's free cash flow. It is not restricted, okay. But we also established the first state in the nation, the grantor trust for $15 million. That is restricted cash. But if you plan, for example, let's suppose, and that's not going to be the reality, obviously, but if we have the same performance in actual cost of removal that's been experienced in 5 or 10 years, it will take like 30 years to deplete the $500 million that we already have pre-funded and then activate the grantor trust. That's my view of it. By the way, I was watching the hearings 2 days ago, and you were asking about the $15 million. It is in information that the PSCO submitted in attachment CPUC 1-8.A1 of the depreciation proceeding. 25A-0165, and it was corrected, but pre and post correction, the numbers didn't move the needle. In average, 5-year actual cost of removal, 14.9 million, and in the last 10 years, average is 15.5 million. So your question was valid, and here we are.
Has staff reviewed like the number of feet or miles a year? I just find it curious. Everything's getting so much more expensive, and for some reason, this one activity has not over a time frame in which we experienced pretty severe inflation.
Well, remember it's an average. Staff review the variations between years, but still an average, still the average. There are years that is
Sure.
yeah.
But I think the average is telling, like over that period, there was significant inflation in labor costs and component costs. So I'm just curious if you reviewed the amount of work done in addition to the cost to try to understand how that cost has been maintained.
No, we didn't. But again, it doesn't make sense to me that the explanation that we are receiving for the huge difference between $1 and $5 billion is that the $1.1 billion estimate, company estimate, is considers removal of all the system at once, and the $5 billion is normal operating of piecemeal removal as the business goes on, and it's that doesn't make sense to me. Even though, anyway, we still have facts. We still have an accrual of over $100 million a year for cost of removal. The actual being expense is $15 million, as you've seen. We have $1 billion already pre-collected, waiting to be disbursed for this purpose. And in top of that, to address the cash availability risk, we establish the trust. What I would like to convey is that depreciation package was unopposed on the settlement, and no party opposed depreciation and salvation on the trust terms of the settlement. So I still remain confident that the settlement, taken as a whole, is just fair and reasonable, and that it's most important, its depreciation, net salvation, trust terms preserve every position that staff may wish to press in the proper future forum. And on the other hand, the package secures immediate, substantial, and verifiable benefits for the Colorado ratepayers. Excuse me for insisting, but I came here to defend the settlement, and I really believe.
I understand the situation you're in.
Yeah, but okay. That means that you recommended removing negative net salvage. Do you now abandon that recommendation? No. Staff continues to believe the issues we raised in Heated Exhibit 501, that they merit commission attention, and paragraph 40 of the settlement expressly preserves them. Settlement maintains the depreciation status quo of the commission established in proceeding 25A-0165G and the previous rate case, 24AL-0049G, while capturing immediate and substantial customer benefits in the package.
Okay, thank you. Those are my only questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilman. I know I waived my questions, but since you've already got your suit and tie on, I'm going to ask them because that was Commissioner Gilman's fault, not mine. And I think you've already acknowledged this, but in your rebuttal testimony, hearing Exhibit 501, page 29, line 4, and we don't have to pull it up, I think you recommend that the commission should order the prospective removal of the negative net salvage value component from the depreciation rates approved in the prior gas depreciation case. And I understand you no longer support that, but would you acknowledge I read that right from your testimony?
Wait. I still support that. This is a compromise. The settlement is a compromise. So I still support it. And for me, it will be convenient because, first of all, we still have the $500 million waiting for you to decide where to apply it if you want to reclassify. But also we need, as you mentioned yesterday, trust hasn't been established. So we need more, staff needs more time to evaluate the performance of the trust. It's the first one in the nation. And that's also another reason why I support this agreement. But I'm not quitting my position.
All right. Let me just ask you one question that I asked Mr. Moeller and Mr. Wainer. Any thoughts if this commission reduced by 30 million per year the negative net salvage value depreciation expense available to support the company's regulatory liability approach that disperses free cash flow in real time to offset the potential adverse impacts on the company's credit metrics? Further assume that we accelerated depreciation by, say, another 30 million per year in this case, consistent with Ms. Niemi's supplemental direct. The goal would be to leave the settlement agreement revenue requirement as it is, but start eliminating the company's regulatory liability approach to negative, or at least reducing the company's regulatory liability approach to negative net salvage value and depreciation expense, and to slow the growth rate in negative rate base in this case. I think it would also, to your point, it would accelerate depreciation instead of add to depreciation expense. So and I understand you may not support it because you signed the settlement agreement, but if the commission wanted to do that, do you have any advice about how to best do it, or any guidance, thoughts?
Well, if you're going to reduce the cost of removal component of depreciation by 30 million, that's what I understood, and then increase, that's I deduct, you didn't express, but it was implicit, increase the grantor trust by that amount?
No. This would not increase the grantor trust. We'd accelerate depreciation by that amount, as
you're talking about shifting the 30 million from cost of removal to life?
To accelerated depreciation.
To really accelerate depreciation?
Yes. So it keeps the company's credit metrics basically identical. It maintains the settlement agreement revenue requirement, but it starts to manage down this negative net salvage value revenue requirement, and it truly accelerates depreciation instead of increasing acceleration, to the point you made in response to Commissioner Gilman. Any thoughts, guidance?
Yes, I have a thought, and it still supports the settlement. It would be the same of, instead of doing that, reclassify 30 million from the cost of removal reserve to the life reserve, and then you accelerate the depreciation by 30 million. By reclassifying the 400 something millions I suggested, you were shortening the asset lives by 4.4 years, right? So it would be a lesser impact, but still you will be accelerating depreciation. But you don't have to touch the expense. You can manage what you already have accumulated, and
So
still support my settlement.
So it sounds like there may be an alternative way of achieving what I'm seeking to do, which is to reduce the negative net salvage value, but just classify it in a different way than the way I'm trying to classify it.
Yes, sir. And that's why I always been very clear that we do not propose any disallowance. We just are against the pre-funding of this cost.
All right, Mr. Cox, maybe in your statement of position, you can help give us some guidance about how to do that if I can get another vote and if we want to go down that path. So that's all I had. Mr. Cox, redirect.
Just one clarification on your proposal. So when you say increase the accelerated depreciation by 30 million, are you suggesting that would then stay in into the trust, or would that just continuing to
No.
be free cash flow?
It'd be free cash flow to offset the reduction in the negative net salvage value. I assume you were asking me, not Mr.
Yes, I was.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
assume the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have redirect for Mr. Rivera-Lugo?
Yeah, just one real quick. Mr. Rivera-Lugo, you suggested, you were asked about your answer testimony positions. You indicated you weren't necessarily you weren't not supporting those, but you supported the settlement. So can you just clarify your support for the settlement and how that's consistent with how it was consistent with your recommendations?
Yes, as I said, settlement is not inconsistent with my testimony. It is a compromise, which is different. Several of my recommendations were realized in the settlement. The annualization adjustment was excluded. The 13-month average convention was adopted. The trust funding was held at $15 million baseline with no expansion. Others recommendations were not adopted, but were preserved for future proceeding. And for me, the settlement gave everything that staff needed in hitting Exhibit 501. And I'm okay with it. That's why I honestly support it. But again, I'm not abandoning my position, and I understand the three main concerns of the commission. First, the negative rate-based risk, then the cash availability of what already collecting through depreciation as is free cash flow, and the stranded assets risk, which was the original risk that started this position of staff, because we've been supporting increasing depreciation since 2022, but that's why I made the distinction between acceleration and increasing. Ours was a truly acceleration of depreciation because we were addressing stranded assets. Our proposal of $15 million eventually ended up, and I'm not going to relitigate anything, but eventually ended up funding the trust. And that's cost of removal, has nothing to do with stranded assets.
And just to clarify, you're not making those arguments here. You're, as part of the settlement, or are you reserving those arguments for later?
Yes, sir. That's why I've been trying to convey since the beginning. I mean, settlement is a compromise that achieves a balanced outcome through interrelated terms, and staff, as a settling party, supports all aspects in the agreement of that hearing. 10 parties joined it. Only Constellation Energy was the only opponent, and we all know that it was a partial opposition expressly limited to telemetry and communication line terms.
Thank you. No more redirect.
You may be excused and change your clothes, Mr. Rivera-Lugo.
Thank you.
Next on my list is Ms. Anstey. Are you out there? Here you are. Can you hold up your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Put your hand down. Is anybody with you or communicating with you in any way?
No.
If that changes, will you let us know?
Yes.
Ms. Hayden.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Ms. Anstey. Will you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Sure. Trisha Anstey, TRICIAANSTEY.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I work for the Colorado Public Utilities Commission, and my title is Affordability Manager.
And did you cause to be filed into this proceeding what has been marked as hearing exhibit 504, the answer testimony of staff witness Anstey?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair, Commissioners, Ms. Anstey is available for questioning.
I don't think you had any questions, Commissioner Plant, did you? No. Commissioner Gumman? No. Can we pull up your rebuttal test, your answer testimony at page 31, line 14? And I think it's going to say Piesco disconnected 55,712 residential customers for non-payment in 2025. Did I read that right?
Yes.
All right, let's go to page 32, line 3. Do you see where you say that the increase for gas disconnections has been less than the increase in electric disconnections? However, given that many customers are dual customers, many gas customers are likely included in that electric disconnection count. Did I read that one right?
Yes.
All right. Just one more question for foundation. And on page 33, line 5, and again on page 34, figure TA2, it looks like only 37% of disconnected customers on the gas side were restored to service in the same reporting period. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. And on page 35, line 9, you state that eliminating involuntary disconnections for PIP participants only partially solves the disconnect restore issue because it only helps those who are enrolled in the program. Assuming I got that right, would you be willing to maybe elaborate a little on your view of those shortcomings?
Yeah. Well, I want to say that some of the issue about the reconnect, that 37%, sometimes that's because somebody has to go out to reconnect. So you may not see that reconnection in the same period as disconnection, depending on the time of the month that you were disconnected. So it may not be that somebody is disconnected and ultimately never gets reconnected. So I just wanted to clarify that. So that's one thing. I think in eliminating involuntary disconnections for PIP participants is huge, but we also know that we have a lower rate of adoption of the program. And so for those who don't get into the program because they don't meet the energy burden or, for whatever variety of reasons that they don't, I think it was just important to find another avenue to help stop disconnections for those who are income qualified. And I think that the settlement actually does a fairly good job of addressing that issue, because if you attest, either self-attest to Excel or you are referred from another program and you say, I'm IQ, I'm income qualified, but for whatever reason, I'm not eligible to meet the energy burden, you're still going to get that hold on disconnection, which is a huge support. Yeah.
Understood. Can we pull up hearing exhibit 504, attachment TA1? Is it fair to say that these are your work papers based on disconnection data from proceeding number 23M-0042EG? And from a spreadsheet that ultimately includes monthly disconnection data by zip code that I believe the company filed in March of 2026. Is that an accurate characterization of where this data comes from?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that in preparing your testimony in both the electric and gas rate cases, you've relied on that underlying spreadsheet for your analyses and work papers?
Yes.
Okay. Can we pull up what's been marked as hearing exhibit 1705? I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this.
Yeah,
okay.
I looked at it. I didn't, start like fact checking all of it, but yes.
Understood. So do you see on page 1 that this presentation relies on the same underlying data from 23M-0042EG in footnote 1 as you did in hearing exhibit 504 attachment TA1? Do you see that?
Yes.
And do you have any reason to believe that the use of this data is somehow inappropriate or misrepresented?
No.
Okay. Can we go to page 2? Do you see how these findings are also based on that same data as well as your answer testimony from the electric rate case?
Yes.
And assuming that this is accurate, which may not yet be established on this record, do you see where the top 10 zip codes contain 27% of the disconnections?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to believe that's inaccurate or misrepresented?
I couldn't confirm or deny that because I did not personally analyze those zip codes.
Fair enough. And do you see that if it was 27% out of the top 10 zip codes out of 55,000, that would be almost 15,000 customers disconnected in those zip codes?
Yes.
Okay. We turn to page 4? And you see, again, assuming this is accurate, which again has not been fully established on this record, do you see where this shows that the 10 zip codes with the most disconnections appear to have significantly higher shares of people of color than the state average?
Yes.
And if you go to page 5 and page 6, well, just stay there. Do you see, again, assuming this is accurate, which isn't necessarily established on this record, it appears that the top 15 zip codes with the most disconnections are disproportionately impacted communities. Would you have any reason to believe that this is inaccurate or misrepresented with a full understanding that you haven't done the analysis?
You know, without further information, it would be difficult for me to confirm that, but I'll take your word for it.
No, no, this isn't. Let's not go there.
I mean, I can't say that I would confirm or deny it.
Okay.
Because I haven't looked at it.
All right. Here's where I want to go with this. Assume for purposes of this conversation that it is accurate. Ms. Howard described this as an outreach and education challenge and talked about self-attestation, the company's red trucks, community outreach, and general correlations among areas with high disconnections and the allocation of bill assistance dollars. And if you could turn back to page 4. But again, if this is accurate, I'm concerned that this is more of a shortcoming in the commission's, not the company, disconnection policy, where this outcome should perhaps be not allowed. The statute requires the commission to minimize impacts to disproportionately impacted communities and address historical inequalities. So again, not saying the company did anything wrong. I think they're fully compliant with the tariff. I think this is a result of structural income and poverty issues. But it does seem like this is a problem with our disconnect policies, not an outreach and education problem, where that's my concern, again, if accurate. So any comments on that characterization of what's going on here?
Well, I will say, I mean, when we're looking at zip codes, there are a number of census block groups that fall within that. And so I think we need to get a little more granular than zip codes before I'd be ready to say, like, let's just, put a brush to all of this and say if all of these zip codes are being disconnected, and I would want to see that more on a census block group level, because neighborhoods can change pretty significantly by census block group regardless of zip code. So that would be the first thing, which is, something that we have in the works. So that is the first thing I would say about that. I think we have a good amount of disconnection protections, but I do think that lowering the energy burden is going to make a large difference here. Because I think, and I looked at Ms. Howard's rebuttal testimony and looking at people who are actually enrolled in these zip codes. I mean, I'd have to look at that, also analyze that further. But if people are being enrolled in these areas, my feeling is that the assistance we're providing isn't enough to prevent the disconnection. So what we've created in the settlement, I think we are going to find that this data and potentially the demographic of it will change a bit.
Okay. Can you pull up Ms. Anstey's answer testimony again at page 42, line 13? And you discussed the company's outreach efforts in the communities with the most disconnects, including several of the zip codes in this top 20 zip code analysis. I appreciate that those efforts seem to increase enrollment, but I've also noticed your argument here that the company's current metrics for education and outreach aren't tied to concrete outcomes for vulnerable customers or those not enrolled in PIP. Could you talk about your concern here, which seems to be that we don't really know whether the company's outreach in the most disconnected areas is helping the most vulnerable customers? Just any comments on that?
Yeah, I think when we're looking for results and outcomes, they have to be concrete. We have to have some metrics that say, we are going out, and it's not about just talk, I talked to this many people. It's about, how many people did you enroll in that zip code after you went out for that education and outreach? How many applications did you receive? How many enrollments did you get? How many arrearages were cleared? Because sometimes some of these arrearages can be cleared, but then they aren't, but they're still not eligible for PIP. So knowing those things, I think that really helps us understand how effective because going out into the community in and of itself is only as effective as the results of that. I can talk all day to somebody, but whether or not they apply, that's a different story.
All right, you can take this down. Any guidance if the commission wanted the PUC staff to investigate the patterns of disconnection, its impact on customers in disproportionately impacted communities, and the allocation of bill assistance dollars? I think in your prior response to me, you made it clear we don't have the data we need. I think you said it even more strongly on the electric rate case. It's obvious that 1705 isn't going to be used as evidence. So any thoughts or guidance if we ask the PUC staff to timely create an evidentiary record that answers some of these questions and could be relied on in setting policy?
Yeah, I think, first of all, getting data by a census block group, which we don't have right now, right? That is going into effect in the next annual report. But also understanding who is disconnected for longer than 24 hours or 72 hours, because 72 hours or longer of a disconnection really gives us an indication of the people who are in desperate need of assistance, and the people who are disconnected, more regularly. And I think it would be important to see that by census block group to start understanding, okay, where are our most impacted census block groups? And then using that information, get to a place where we can start looking at a pilot program that says, what's the best way to address this for equity? Because, you know, my concern would be when you talked about auto enrollment,
That's my next question. That's my next question, if it helps.
Okay, I mean, do you want to ask it before I talk about it, or?
Yeah, let me ask. In terms of a future pilot, any thoughts or guidance about automatically enrolling customers from these top zip codes with the most disconnects into bill assistance programs before they get disconnected, given some of the barriers to opting in, which it sounds like the settlement certainly reduces, but probably doesn't come close to eliminating. Out of 600 customers, the company called, it sounds like the company struggled to reach even one customer that had been disconnected for longer than a week or two. So thoughts about auto enrolling a narrow group, and by census tract, or even slower, and maybe it's in the form of a pilot, but any guidance about how to think about that?
Yeah, so when you say a narrower group, that gives me a little less pause, because auto enrollment, if we said everybody in a zip code, say, that would be an extraordinary amount of people, and we'd run out of funds before we could say boo. But I do think that there is some validity into looking at the most impacted census block groups, and then we can look at like a fixed benefit and auto enrolling everybody. I will caveat that with some of the other reason not to auto enroll, say by zip code, although there is some question about that census block group too, is if you have a gentrifying neighborhood, you may be enrolling people who do not need that assistance. And of course, you could create an opt-out situation, right? Where, although I don't know many people who are like, no, don't make my bill cheaper. So I think an opt-out for that that'd be a tough one. As Ms. Howard mentioned, that is pretty much what the pilot is in Minnesota. And we're trying to understand if that actually was effective in reducing arrears or reducing disconnections. And I'd like to hear some of that information first. But what you're suggesting is it's not so much a PIP benefit, right? Because in auto enrollment, you're saying you're going to get a fixed benefit. What's that? $15, $20 off your bill, whatever.
Well, it's going to stop disconnect.
I think we might find that the budget to do that is not there. Now, I don't know that for sure, but I think that's why we would need to do a pilot. I think we need to understand what's that sweet spot of a benefit that you could you could receive without being disconnected. Now, of course, I would assume that when we're applying those benefits, they're enrolled in something, so they're automatically, going to be they're not going to be disconnected, right? That hold gets put on them. So I think there's some validity to a pilot program like that. I'm not saying that, but I think it needs to be done thoughtfully. And
all right.
Sure, we know all that yet.
Say we did ask staff to look into this, and after that, wanted to order a future application or advice letter filing on disconnection and bill assistance at a fixed time, instead of a loose obligation to explore some pilot with no follow-up. Any thoughts or guidance on the timing of such a filing? Would that be like March 2027, something like that?
Yeah, I would want to see some census block group data reported. So yeah, I would say spring of 2027 would be more that's when we would actually get our first round of data about that. So, so it'd have to go even a little further out than that,
So like June 30th, 2027.
something like that. Yeah.
Ms. Howard suggested yesterday that it makes sense to wait to consider any auto enrollment pilot for the company until the results of the Minnesota Automatic Bill Credit Program are released. My concern is that we will not have the results until after a PUC decision in the electric rate case, and maybe until after this gas rate case. So effectively, consideration of auto enrollment would be deferred to a future proceeding. Do you have any thoughts on that? And maybe it's just in this case or the electric race case, we just ask for a filing at a date certain. Parties can always ask us to move it. Any thoughts or guidance on that?
I would say, yeah, I don't think I think what we're doing in these cases and the settlement we have come on is right where we need to be, because we need to make this forward momentum in order to make a decision on how to do a pilot or change any kind of policy in the future. So, yeah, I think it would make sense to do it in another proceeding.
Mr. Zomer yesterday expressed a concern that it was perhaps not ideal for me as a decision maker to put forward hearing exhibit 1705. I wholeheartedly agree with that perspective. At the same time, however, the disconnected customers concentrated in these DI zip codes don't always seem to have a compelling voice in our processes, which admittedly can be challenging to access. Would you agree with that, or would you say it differently? I know staff certainly has many competing goals and objectives, and primary focus of trial staff isn't this community. Just any thoughts or guidance on that?
Let me make sure.
I would say you're the only witness who really dug into these disconnection numbers in both these cases, which I really appreciate, and was sort of blown away by what's going on the electric side. So any thoughts on the process and the the voice for those communities?
Yeah, I think that with Senate Bill 272, I think moving forward, there's just going to be a lot more spotlight on that anyway. And I would certainly expect that this continues to be something that we keep an eye on as rates are going up. Inevitably, we need to be thinking about affordability and how that impacts income qualified communities and DIC. So I'm not sure what other guidance I could give you. Do you mean like how we incorporate it into proceedings?
I guess any thoughts if the commission asks staff to help explore ways to provide these customers with a greater voice in our processes?
Yeah. I think that there are some, and I believe with some of 272, there's a way to empower some of the IQ communities and the community-based organizations to participate in the process. I think that would be huge to have advocacy on that side.
I agree. I don't like where I landed in this case any better than Mr. Zomer did. Redirect Ms. Hayden.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Ms. Ansey, just a couple of clarifying questions as it pertains to that hearing exhibit 1705. Did you create that exhibit?
No.
And have you seen that exhibit?
I have seen it when it was introduced a couple days ago.
Are you familiar with it?
Yes.
What is your level of familiarity?
Familiar that I read it, and there were some things that did pertain to my testimony that referred to the numbers that I used in my testimony.
And do you know whether all of that data contained in that exhibit was derived solely from gas disconnections?
No,
And do you know whether the data incorporates elements from electric disconnections?
I believe it does. Yes.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to analyze the data that was contained in that exhibit?
No.
Or are you able to verify the validity of the data contained in that exhibit?
No.
Thank you. Ms. Ansey, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions that pertain to the settlement agreement. Are you familiar with the terms of hearing exhibit 150, the settlement agreement?
Yes.
And did you have the opportunity to hear Ms. Howard's testimony yesterday?
Yes.
Does the settlement agreement provide several proposals in an attempt to reduce the energy insecurity that you were just speaking with the chairman about?
Yes.
Is one of those this potential pilot program?
Yes.
And some of the ideas that you just spoke with the chair about, is there an opportunity for this pilot program to maybe encourage others to participate in the process?
Yes.
Is it important to have a well-informed stakeholder process going forward with 25AL?
Yes.
Pardon
Yes.
me.
That's what happens with settlement agreements, Miss Hayden.
Yes.
Yeah, we would be remiss in not having a thorough stakeholder engagement. That would be part of this process. Otherwise, it would be hard to get buy-in. We need community buy-in. We need stakeholder buy-in.
And by community buy-in, is there potential for the voices of the DIC community to be heard within this settlement agreement proposal?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Ansey. When it comes to the auto enroll program that you were speaking with the chair about, can you explain to me a little bit more why a careful stakeholder process that may be a more productive route than implementing an auto enroll program?
Yeah, I think that if we start focusing in and providing, say, a program in one area and not others, there is also, a chance that equity is not shown, right? That we decide to, these are the areas we're going to help, these aren't, and this is all ratepayer money, right? We know it's going to IQ folks, but we want to make sure that we are thoughtful about how we are dispersing those funds to help the people who are in need and using the ratepayer money in the most thoughtful way.
And you mentioned that a possible auto enroll program might place some budget constraints on the program. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think it would, if we're doing auto enrollment, we would want to think about, well, first of all, what's that sweet spot for giving people benefits? But then how many people are we able to include in that before we run out of money? Right now, the money that goes to a PIP program is paid on $1 for every customer. And we wouldn't want to exceed that. And I feel like if we auto-enrolled folks, we could find ourselves in a pretty big budgetary constraint if we didn't consider the geography and the amount of people that are going into this.
So fair to say there may not be any guarantees that an auto enroll program would target assistance dollars to those most in need?
That is true. It could be seen that, the people who are most in need could be more in the city or in the metro area, when we also have concerns for those in more rural areas as well, who may not have that voice or the census block group indication that, those in a metro area.
In speaking with the chair about the idea of an investigation, to have staff go ahead and pursue an investigation and what that potential process might look like. Do you think that that is covered as part of a pilot program and the agreement that we have in the settlement in this case?
Yes, I
Okay.
do.
Fair to say there's a high level of interest, support, and strong commitment to pursue an evidence-based outcome to address energy insecurity.
Absolutely. I think every party involved is concerned and cares about this.
And by evidence-based, I mean having the data to more directly target specific beneficiaries. Is that right?
Yes,
And is that data coming to you?
it is not quick enough, but yes, it is coming.
Let's see. Does the settlement provide an opportunity to acquire that data, get more data through the proposals that are suggested in this settlement to achieve the end outcome?
Yes,
And do you think that the settlement strikes a good balance on how parties can assist DIC in the future?
I do. I believe that the steps that we're taking in this settlement were the very first ones we needed to do to progress to exactly what we're talking about.
Thank you, Ms. Anstey. I don't have any further redirect.
You may be excused, Ms. Anstey. Thank you.
Chair, just an update. I don't need to question Mr. Shea, Denver's witness. I think the things I was going to cover with him have already been covered elsewhere. So just wanted to get you notification of that as soon as I could.
Appreciate it.
Sorry, just to jump in there. Could Mr. Shea be excused then?
Yes, sorry if that wasn't clear.
Perfect.
Mr. Shea
Thank
is
you.
excused.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Next on my list is Mr. Fernandez. Are you out there, sir?
Yes.
Can you hold up your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Put your hand down. Is anybody with you or communicating with you in any way?
No.
If that changes, will you let us know?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Fernandez, would you please state and spell your name?
Ron Fernandez, Fernandez.
And by whom are you employed?
A financial analyst for the UCA.
Did you cause hearing exhibit 400 and there's a revised version 1 to be filed and served in this case?
Yes.
When I ask you those questions today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Right. And your testimony has already been admitted into evidence, so Mr. Fernandez is available for Commissioner questions.
Can we pull up hearing exhibit 400 at page 6, line 8? Can you just read that, those first two sentences starting on line 8? Mr. Fernandez.
The best analogy I can think of to represent what Piesco is doing to ratepayers is the frog analogy. When a frog is placed in a pot of cold water and the heat is gradually increased, the frog boils.
One more.
Unless the commission starts taking action now to moderate or even reduce rates, Colorado ratepayers are going to be cooked.
All right. If I represented to you that the company's long-term rate impact model, as confirmed by Mr. Piquet's oral testimony, shows base rate revenues and rates increasing from 2024 to 2030 by 9.5%, or four times inflation. Would you have any reason to doubt that representation?
I don't doubt it, but the path they're on, it's going to be even higher than that.
All right, you can take this down. In his oral testimony, Mr. Piquet acknowledged that the commission has been raising concerns for many years surrounding the growth in capital spending due to potentially misaligned financial incentives. Can we pull up hearing exhibit 150 It's a settlement agreement. On page 17, paragraph 36, do you see where the settlement agreement obligates the company to host a capacity, a CapEx PIM stakeholder process that concludes no later than December 31st, 2027? Do you see that?
It just came on the screen here, and yes, I do see it.
Is there any obligation to do anything once that process concludes?
I don't believe so.
Mr. Judd raised significant concerns about a stakeholder process for transportation shippers, but at least that process obligated the company to file an application or an advice letter filing. There's no similar process here, I think. Is that right?
That looks correct to me.
And are you aware of any stakeholder process in Colorado during my 5 years on the bench that led to meaningful outcomes when it was opposed to a core company financial interest like capital spending bias?
No, I've not seen the commission do anything of that, and the commission the companies just went crazy with spending. I think their spending has been out of control, and that's one of the reasons we're in the situation we are with these rates going up far faster than inflation.
Do you believe the settlement agreement is going to slow down the growth in capital spending and rate base and base rates, stop the frog from boiling?
No, I don't. I don't think that addresses it. I think they're going to continue on their spending spree. The incentives to continue to spend as much and as quick as they can are still there, and they're going to take advantage of it in order to increase the money that they're going to send to their investors.
You can take this exhibit down. So what's your advice to this commission to not approve the settlement agreement?
No, the UCA supports the settlement agreement.
Why?
It's give and take on the issues. I think the commission needs to take some action to in the future to dissuade Piasco from continuing to spend at the levels that it's been spending now.
And how can we do it, given that the only opportunity to do this is in a rate case, and UCA agreed to a settlement agreement that doesn't address the core problem, nor does it address really negative net salvage value. It still appears to permit some significant subsidies for new growth and leaves the common equity ratios at levels that are generally higher than other utilities, according to your testimony.
You're correct on everything. Things you can do in the future is one, meaningfully lower ROE than what they currently have. Maybe the commission can look into ordering something that any costs that cause rates to increase above inflation would not be considered prudent and are not recoverable from ratepayers. That would put the company on notice up front that they need to adjust their costs, both their expenses and their CapEx up front, as opposed to, because after the fact, it's too late. Once the money's spent, there's nothing really that, in effect, the commission can do. But I think the commission can also use its bully pulpit, which you have been doing, but it has been ineffective to date.
Because the only way we can address this is in a rate case. And now we have a rate case in front of us.
I think there's
and you've agreed to a settlement agreement that you had just testified isn't going to solve the problem you identified. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, that is 100% correct. Yeah, rates are going to go up as a result of this settlement, no question about it. And there's nothing in this settlement really that dissuades the company from continuing on its spending spree.
can I just, I mean, you're not going to answer this question probably, but why would you agree to the settlement agreement and not let these issues go to the commission where we could have perhaps done more than what you got out of the give and take of the settlement agreement?
Your Honor, I apologize. I
Yeah,
have to.
fair
And let me
enough.
point out,
Fair
you're
enough.
the sole party to take on the electric case, Your Honor. We're still waiting for what you'll do in that case.
I know. All right, I'll stop.
Dr.
I'll stop here.
I'll say Dr. England is addressing all of the questions in relation to the settlement agreement. So he can try or not try to answer your questions on the settlement agreement.
Good luck with redirects, Mr. Nixon.
I don't have any redirect, Your Honor.
Thanks, Mr. Fernandez. You can be excused.
Thank you.
I guess Mr. Witterstein is Miss Dr. England out there.
Yes, I believe he's on screen right now.
Yep.
Dr. England, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You can put your hand down. Is anybody with you or communicating with you in any way?
Nope.
If that changes, will you let us know?
Yes.
I just two really brief questions. I had several conversations with prior witnesses about the Farmstead and Coal Creek Canyon projects, where prior commission orders seem to suggest the cost of serving those customers exceed the revenues. Any thoughts about adding tariff language to our decision in this case that would close this gap and require these customers to pay the costs of new regulator stations, which seem to drive that divergence between revenues and costs, especially given the statute that says a gas utility shall not provide an applicant an incentive to establish gas service to a property? Any thoughts about trying to do that in this case?
I think Mr. Hagland skirted your question yesterday, and I may do the same on broaching on legislative language. And the agreement does include a GSIF, which is at least attempting to address more of the subsidy issue that isn't addressed in the current construction allowances.
I know, but this is a much narrower issue and a much bigger issue. Any thoughts if we tried to do this in this case? Assume we wanted to do it. Any guidance or suggestions about how to do it properly?
I hate to say a stakeholder process given the previous conversations, but you might have to invoke a stakeholder process or a legislative process to get clarity on what was meant by incremental costs.
Well, it says a gas utility shall not provide an applicant an incentive, and we have our own authority to do it. So no guidance or thoughts about how to do this, right? Other than the stakeholder process.
None at this time.
Mr. Witterstein.
Can I ask just a question?
Yeah, please.
Sorry. I didn't get in there before you.
Oh, I apologize.
No, that's okay. I didn't wave you down or anything. I had my camera off and I was like, oh, that went quicker than I expected. So anyway, Dr. England, hi, good afternoon. I just had like 2 questions for you.
Okay, good afternoon.
Hi. So you had stated in your answer testimony that approval of the RSM, which is the decoupling mechanism that was proposed by the company, would have the perverse effect of continuing as opposed to dissuading the company's incentive to put continual investment into the gas distribution infrastructure. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Okay. So I had a bit of a conversation with Mr. Hagland to this effect also yesterday. just kind of trying to think through, the settlement suggestion or agreement to go with a partial decoupling mechanism. But given your concerns here, some of the concerns Mr. Haglund had in his answer testimony, and trying to figure out, I know there's discussion about different ways to address the capital spending issue, whether it's through the stakeholder process with the PIM, better investigating, other funding mechanisms like securitization. But as of now, there is nothing going to happen that seems fundamentally different on the capital spending side, unless you disagree with me there. Yet the settlement advocates for approval of a decoupling mechanism. So I'm just trying to figure out, can you conceive of a process where we try to check in a few years to make sure this really is working to the benefit of ratepayers as well as the company, and that we've been able to address what seems like one of your core concerns in your answer testimony, that this may have a effect of kind of continuing us down the path of increased capital spending.
So this is solely specific to the decoupling mechanism, a check-in to see how it's operating.
Correct.
In terms of encouraging or discouraging greater capital investment?
Correct. And perhaps the implementation of any mechanisms to actually address that. I know some are kind of being investigated as part of the settlement agreement, but nothing's really in place. In the electric decoupling, that was for a set time period, and then there was a review. So trying to figure out if it would be smart to set up something like that so we could ensure there is an intentional check-in to make sure, rather than acting like this is approved in perpetuity.
So I know there's going to be some reporting with the decoupling mechanism. Would it be appropriate to put a term limitation on it? That may have been an oversight during the settlement process that wouldn't have gotten in there. UCA would certainly support a term limit on it.
Or at least, yeah, like a check-in, this many years or the next rate case, that we really make clear that it's important that this be working and to the benefit of ratepayers.
Yeah, I would just encourage you to define what you mean by working, because each party will have its own definition of whether it's working for them or not. So
okay.
I'll just leave
trying
that.
to think through the implications of everything in the settlement agreement and how long we actually intend those implications, unless we determine it's working well. Okay, great. Those are my only questions, Dr. England. Thanks.
Thank you.
Redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. Thank you, Dr. England.
Dr. England, you can be excused. Mr. Bennett, can you hold up your right hand? Oh, you're on mute.
That would help.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Put your hand down. Is anybody with you or communicating with you in any way?
No.
If that changes, will you let us know?
Yes, I will.
Ms. Stockmeyer.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to Mr. Bennett. Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Andrew Bennett, B-E-N-N-E-T-T.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
Energy Outreach Colorado as the Vice President of Advocacy.
And did you cause to be filed in this proceeding answer testimony, cross-answer testimony, and testimony in support of the settlement?
Yes, I did.
And if you were asked the questions in your testimonies today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Okay, and your testimonies are already in the record, and so you are available for questioning by the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to make the same mistake twice, Commissioner Plant. Any questions?
I do not. Thank
Commissioner Gilman.
I don't. Thank you.
I'm a slow learner. Can we pull up hearing exhibit 1400, your answer testimony at page 28, line 15? And I think you say disconnection protection should be more narrowly coupled with participation in structured affordability programs such as PIP, not generally available to any IQ customer. Did I read that right?
I'm sorry, could you point me out to what line it just showed up on my screen?
Do I have the long one?
It's
In,
there.
uh,
It just took a second to load.
Yeah, disconnection protections should be more narrowly be coupled with participation in structured affordability programs such as PIP, not generally available to any income qualified customer. Did I read that right?
Yes, and just for clarification, that's in reference to the electric case on a blanket 12-month, and the concern there was having just a blanket disconnection period without addressing arrearages could cause its own problems with arrearages that build up over time that aren't addressed, or on the front end or the back end somehow.
And that's what you go on to say starting on line 20. And you can scroll down to the next page that it would allow customer arrearages to accumulate to unsustainable levels without a realistic long-term repayment pathway or an effective arrearage management process. Did I read that right?
Yes.
All right. Any thoughts if disconnect protections were focused on a handful of census block tracts or a narrow pilot where disconnection concentrations were the highest, many customers were income qualified, and the opt-in programs least likely to succeed? Would that help narrow and address your concerns?
I think, and building off the questions you asked Ms. Howard and Ms. Nancy just now, I think a more tailored program based on census block groups, as opposed to zip codes that have varying populations, whereas it's my understanding a CBG or census block group is between like 600 and 3,000 individuals or households, would be a better approach to take. And I think we should work as a group to design that pilot. I think many of us that are participating in this hearing, staff, EOC, the company, and others, some of the municipalities, we have different insights and different expertise that could help build or narrow that. I also would just want to make sure that we don't run afoul of any of our discriminatory rate making laws, that we cannot have any sort of discriminatory rates, with the exception being for low income or income qualified customers. So I just wanted to make sure about that. I would note, I don't think that opt-in programs themselves are failing. The 80011 zip code that you've been referencing on that other chart, and I addressed, it was either my answer or cross answer, it's conflating right now.
Cross answer testimony, page 17, line 16 is where it starts. And I was going to flag that and basically ask the same question in light of that. But so, yeah, keep going.
Thank you. So what I would say is there was, I think in the period of concern, there was about 500 customers disconnected. And that same time, I believe EOC's assistance was around 730 customers. So about 1.5 times as many people will come in for energy assistance through EOC as we're disconnected. And of those, it was nearly 300 households were disconnected. So we got them reconnected, and the others were all prevented from being disconnected. So just a clarification point for others that may not know, the only way you can get energy assistance through EOC is if you have an arrearage, and by virtue of that, you would be in the disconnection queue. So we are, the opt-in programs preventing that. That's not including the 80011 LEAP numbers. I don't have those on hand or off the top of my head, so I don't know what those would be, but we are helping more people than we're disconnected. So I would say that opt-in by itself is not the problem. Customers are getting help. We have multiple statutes that require Excel to notice customers, to reach out to the HEAT helpline, which is funded both by EOC and the Colorado LEAP office. that does referrals to energy assistance, either for EOC or LEAP or other available programs, and they can refer you to our local partner agencies. So those programs we have, we are seeing people enroll through them. I think these are important venues, while EOC itself doesn't process the applications, because people do see our address and do hear about us from things like 211, we're processing something like 25 applications in person in the office a week. And maybe just to discuss one of the, I think some topics talked about earlier, roughly 5 out of 10 of those people will speak Spanish. 15% are speaking Arabic or North African language, the rest English, and maybe 1 or 2 like Vietnamese or Cambodian. So the people we're seeing are exactly the people I think that you've been concerned about in those charts that you raised with some demographic information and primary languages spoken at home. So the opt-in programs are serving their purpose. And, just frankly, we do have limited resources. Dr. Nussbaumer's data talked about how many eligible households there were. And Ms. Ansey just talked about if we did blanket enrollments, we would run out of money. We just don't have enough money to do all of that, to enroll every single person.
Do you know how many people are, it's probably the wrong language, but are disconnected and never reconnected?
That would be a difficult number, I think, to grab just from the reporting. There is that 08M docket, and the last 3 numbers are escaping my head, but there is a docket where all the utilities put in their disconnections for the quarter and reconnections for the quarter. One of the issues I think in kind of, taking A minus B equals C is some customers move, and that's why they're disconnected and never reconnect. We also see where customers will change the account holder on the property. So technically, one person's disconnected and never reconnected, but that household may stay connected. So I don't think there's an easy way to find that answer out with exact certainty.
Any guidance if the commission wanted to get a better handle on it, understanding you can't get it exactly certain, but it seems like the company must know certainly the average length of time from when the company is disconnected to when the customer is reconnected, which we haven't been able to get. And there must be estimates of how many people are permanently disconnected. Any guidance if the commission wanted to get that data and information?
I'd say we do have like the energy assistance working group. We could work towards developing how we could get that information from the utilities. I don't know their internal systems precisely, so I couldn't tell you how easy or not it would be. I would believe we should be able to get some of that information, but I think in some of the working groups, we could work towards figuring out how to get that and information from, not just Excel, but the other utilities as well.
Last question. Do you think it's okay, consistent with the disproportionately impacted statute and good regulatory practice for the PUC to allow an outcome where disconnects are highly concentrated in 10 or 20 zip codes? Or, we don't even know how many census tracts. It's probably more concentrated if you looked at it narrowly. Do you think that's okay? How should this commission feel about that?
I think distilling it down to okay or not is quite complicated. It seems to be there's a strong correlation, right? I think we're all looking at these numbers, and we look at the demographics data that you pulled up, and then we look at the disconnection data, and we see a correlation. I would be remiss in not saying that correlation is not causation, because otherwise I have to see Dr. Nussbaumer tomorrow morning, and he would have some words for me. So I think
I've been having similar conversations in my life.
Right. So I think at first glance, that does seem, it seems wrong, right? It appears wrong. So I think I would want to get to the underlying causes. I would want to know, I think we've discussed this in this case, in the lecture case, and I think it's a topic of general concern and around the country. When you look at racial demographics, then income and quality of service and disconnections, what is the underlying cause? And I think Ms. Howard addressed this a bit of, is this an income-based issue? Is the really determinative factor on falling behind and being disconnected? Is it income? Is it some combination of variables? Is this a wider societal issue? I don't know that ascribing blame to XL Energy purely on the basis of them doing it, right?
No blame, no bad
Right.
intent, no out of compliance with the tariff. I truly believe it's a structural issue with, where poverty is located in Colorado. So just want to be really clear about that. I don't think anybody's doing anything wrong. And if anybody is doing something wrong, I think it's the PUC who has the, DI obligations placed on us by statute. But that question still seems valid.
Right.
So.
Well, as a party of case, I won't go so far as to say that it's your fault. The
obligation is on us to
right.
fix.
I was going to say, I think maybe it's all of ours. If we're not developing the information to fully investigate this, maybe that's something introspective we all need to think about. What is it that we need to be doing or doing differently? And I think that can be a collaborative process. And I think you've discussed with Ms. Yancey an investigation. I think potentially just limiting it to staff might need to be looked at, and whether or not we open this up to other parties to look at, because I think we have a lot of smart people intervening in these processes. We have a lot of parties with a lot of good input, and I think that if we work on this together, I think that would be the most helpful process.
Yeah, not so much that it's staff working away in isolation, but more a staff-led process because they have audit rights. Again, it's probably outside the scope of this case. It's more the electric case. But it seems like there are significant data gaps in that case. And staff does have unique audit powers, and the commission has rights to ask staff to do things that we don't have rights to ask you to do. So I would see it more as a staff-led process. So I don't know, does that help? So with that characterization, any guidance for us if we were to do that?
I think that sounds better. I think we'd all want to see it kind of in writing. It's a little easier than on the fly a bit. But I think, if there was a staff-led process and we could have others with input, I think with EOC hiring Dr. Nussbaumer and leveraging his talents, we're seeing data in ways that we've never looked at it before. And I think that's something I think the commission is doing as well, and other parties, is we're looking at new sources of data, and we all now have computational powers we didn't have just a little while ago. So I think that sounds better to me, and I think that'd be a good process. I think you were talking about deliverables. I think we would want some deliverable dates. I think that's best is when we know what we have to do by when, as it is something a bit amorphous. Ms. Yancey brought up the 272 rulemakings. That law was passed 5 years ago, and it's taken a while to get there. And I think I just would not want us to be in a position where we talk about it and we don't do something about it.
And is June, say if we had to pick a date, probably not in this case, but if we had to pick a date, does, June 2027 sound right to you, or do you have any guidance?
As a deliverable date or a beginning date?
Yes, a filing date with, the outcome of some staff-led stakeholder process that dug into the data.
So it's about 10 months. I think we could do a lot of work in 10 months. I wouldn't want to volunteer Dr. Nussbaumer's commitment on time like that. Again, I do have to see him tomorrow morning, but I think something in 10 months is probably doable.
That's all I had, Ms. Stockmeyer. Any redirect?
Yes, thank you. Just very briefly, Chair. Mr. Bennett, you were discussing with Chair Blank that you believe that the current opt-in process for the affordability programs is working. In your opinion, does this settlement agreement that EOC has signed on to improve that process?
Yes.
Do you want to expand on that?
I'm sorry. And sorry, did you say approve or improve? Maybe I misheard you.
Improve. Does it
Improve.
improve the opt-in programs? And if so, how so?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I misheard you. Well, I think one of the key improvements here is the cross referral to the PIP program by lowering the affordability percentage. That is going to unlock a lot more households that when EOC or LEAP, which are both opt-in programs or for clients or customers or program participants, however different programs refer to them, to Excel for enrollment in the PIP program, those customers will be able to be enrolled. You know, there are a number of customers that are being denied enrollment because under the current 6% rules, they just aren't meeting it, and being just fractionally under when we know that these households are facing affordability issues is difficult for both, you know, EOC referring and even Excel having to deny these people. So this provides a benefit that has real dramatic impact on households, and we constantly receive communications from households that this has been something that's life-changing. We're allowing them to afford something that they have to have and can't avoid. And there's no way in modern society to avoid energy. So by allowing more customers to get into an affordable bill, and you know, EOC supports that because it does provide dignity when you are actually able to afford your bill and have access to energy, that this is something that helps households. So absolutely, we believe this settlement agreement and enhancements to the PIP program that's leveraged by the opt-in programs is an improvement.
Okay, thank you. And just one last question. I appreciate the conversation you had with Chair Blank and his concerns about disconnections in certain areas in the service territory. Is to the extent that EOC is supportive of the commission addressing those, does it propose any modifications to the settlement to do that?
I don't believe so. It doesn't. It seems like it'd be an addition to. It wouldn't otherwise be modifying the PIP program. So I don't believe it modifies the settlement program or settlement proposal. Sorry.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. You may be
Thank you.
excused. Commissioner Gilman, do you want to do Mr. Gardner, or do you want to conclude with Mr. Bennett and then go to Mr. Gardner? Or do you have a preference?
Sorry, you mean Mr. Kenny?
Sorry, Mr.
Okay.
Kenny.
I can go either way.
All right, let's finish with Mr. Kenny, and then we'll go to Mr. Gardner. Mr. Kenny, can you hold up your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Put your hand down. Is anybody with you or communicating with you in any way?
No.
If that changes, will you let us know?
Yes.
Over to you, Miss Mandel. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry
There you
about that. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Kenny. Would you please state and spell your name?
My name is Michael Kenny, Michael Kenney.
And Mr. Kenny, by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Western Resource Advocates as the Building Decarbonization Manager.
And Mr. Kenny's testimonies have been already admitted, and he stands ready for commissioner questions.
Commissioner Gilman, I think Commissioner Plant shut off his camera, so I'm not going to bug him. Do you have questions for Mr. Kenny?
Just a few, thanks. Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Kenny.
Good afternoon.
I'll start with the same opening as Mr. Rivera-Lugo. I understand you've signed on to the settlement agreement, but I do still have some questions about the positions you took in answer testimony. understanding. You have agreed to the settlement agreement.
Yes.
So your proposal and answer testimony was essentially to reduce over time the net salvage component of the depreciation expense down to a 10-year rolling average of actual cost of removal. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then place that 10-year rolling average into a trust. The trust?
Yeah, so yeah, my initial proposal was to take that 10-year rolling average and yeah, place it into the trust.
Okay. And so just trying to understand that, at the same time as, and I totally understand the data that's been presented here, that over the last 5 years and 10-year views, the rolling average has been around 15 million either way. But I think in your testimony, you also indicate that the future may not look like the past because a lot of the policies and the real potential for increased retirements moving forward. So I'm curious kind of how this would work in your answer testimony perspective, especially if we began to see increased retirements. Does that create kind of a lumpy situation for ratepayers, and how do you really deal with that?
That's a good question, and maybe not necessarily something I had contemplated until maybe just listening earlier today to witness Rivera Lugo talk. And I think while the trust is gonna be sitting there for the time being, collecting funds, accruing interest, not necessarily being used, in the next year or two, right? I think that right now it's a 5-year period that it's untouched. So I think if you're using a rolling average that's going in year over year into the trust, and if the company's incurring costs that are very different than what you're collecting, I think on one hand, as witness Lugo pointed out, there is already a cost of removal collected. I think he indicated somewhere in the order of $500 million. So there's already a lot that's been pre-collected that would go towards paying that cost of removal, before you even get to the trust potentially. So I think you would want to see how is the year-over-year cost changing, and if you need to go from a 10-year rolling average to a 5-year to make sure there's no shortfalls. I think there are ways it could be adjusted. But as you know, we don't exactly know what 5-10 years from now is going to look like in terms of gas system usage and retirements.
Okay. One other question, kind of on a different topic, but I'd asked Mr. Bouquet this, and he wasn't aware, but given your position in building decarbonization, I was curious if you have any knowledge of the organization that Public Service pays dues to, called Coloradans for Energy Access. Have you ever heard of that?
I can't say I have.
Okay, great. Those are my only questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Gilman. Mr. Kenny, if I represented to you that Mr. Piquet testified that base rates are projected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of roughly 9.5% between 2024 and 2030, would you have any reason to doubt that representation?
No, sir.
In a declining sales business, can you help me understand how it is a good idea to grow base rates and base rate revenue by 9.5% per year, given that it's 4 times faster than inflation?
I mean, I would hesitate to say good or bad if these are investments that are keeping the system safe. But I see your point that if we're investing more in the system at a faster rate than other costs are going up, and if usage is declining, then we would expect the cost each customer has to pay is going to increase. So I mean, obviously my answer testimony touched on this concern a bit, in how the company's future investments have the potential to cause some future pains on people's budgets.
As I understand the settlement agreement, it sets in place a stakeholder process to explore PIM over the coming years. Is that right?
Yeah, the settlement sets up a process throughout 2027 to investigate a CapEx PIM.
And the results of the CapEx PIM process won't be available to 2028 and couldn't likely be implemented until the company files the next gas rate case and new rates are put into place. Is that an accurate understanding of the process that would likely ensue from this stakeholder process?
Not exactly. I believe, and I can pull up the settlement language, that paragraph specifically, but I think there would also be an opportunity within the gas infrastructure plan application to look at that. And that might also be a very useful place because we are looking at future investments and what those how they're going to be compared to historical levels of investment and across what categories that investment is occurring in. So I think that was part of the thought process, is that the next gas infrastructure plan would likely come before another rate case.
Given your answer testimony and Mr. Piquet's rebuttal testimony and oral testimony, assume this commission modified your symmetric PIM proposal as followed that you presented in your answer testimony. First, assume we set a baseline target for capital spending based on actual historic 2024 capital spending as determined in this case, or the GEP. So instead of triggering the PIM off capital additions, it is based on capital spending as Mr. Piquet recommended in his rebuttal testimony. Second, assume we set the baseline capital spending as being flat from 24 levels instead of the 3.3 decline you suggested. Third, assume we implemented a 5% deadband above and below the best baseline as Mr. Piquet suggests. Fourth, assume we cap the penalty at $5 million, which would be well under 1% of the company's 2024 base rate revenues and 2% of 26 projected earnings, and seems consistent with Mr. Piquet's rebuttal testimony. Fifth, assume we implemented this PIM in this rate case, starting with rewards and penalties on the capital spending growth in 2027 as compared to the actual 2024 baseline, and continuing thereafter until the next rate case. I think this is consistent with your recommendation, page 44, lines 15 to 21. Given all this, the stakeholder process outlined in the settlement agreement could then be used to adjust the PIM adopted in this case prior to the next rate case. I understand you signed a settlement agreement and can't advocate for this, but if the commission wanted to do this, do you have any guidance on something like this? I bounced the exact same proposal off Mr. Piquet.
Yes, I think I heard that exchange, and yeah, we are supporting the settlement in its entirety and don't recommend any modifications here. I think with that said, the points you have laid out, there's interactions that I think still need to be explored. One example is if the gas capacity infrastructure fee is put into place, how do the costs that are recovered through that fee interact with a PIM? Similarly, if we are successful in implementing NPAs, how do those avoided projects, are they counted, and in what way? So I think that there's some items that I still would want to hash out with a stakeholder group to think through potential pitfalls. I think most of the points you laid out are well received, and I appreciated Piquet and his rebuttal laying out some of the clarifications that made sense from the company's perspective, especially around the deadband and thinking about capital additions versus capital expenditures. I think those are all well received. I think on the safety investments, I think that's one area where we're still trying to figure out, like, how does that work without creating a perverse incentive to not make safety investments. And as the same time, the commission is looking at more NPA opportunities in that category. If the service line NPA gets off the ground this year, that will also have an impact in the spending we would expect to see. So there's some outstanding issues that I would still want to think through.
Well, it's capped at $5 million, so it's not like every issue has to be perfect. It's just getting something going. In your last question, in your rebuttal testimony hearing exhibit 1200, page 71, line 9, we don't have to pull it up. You recommend a gradual removal of negative net salvage value from the depreciation expense in order to avoid immediate disruption to the company's free cash flow. Again, I fully understand you're supporting the settlement agreement, but assume the commission wanted to go down this path on its own motion. Any thoughts or guidance if this commission reduced negative net salvage value by 30 million in this case, and accelerated depreciation by, say, another 30 million per year in this case, as outlined in Ms. Nemi's supplemental direct? The goal would be to slow down the creation of negative rate base and start eliminating the company's regulatory liability approach to negative net salvage value and depreciation expense. So adopting Mr. Rivera-Lugo's distinction, we'd be decreasing depreciation expense and offsetting current credit metrics by accelerating it. So there'd be no change to the settlement agreement depreciation, credit metrics or revenue requirement, but we'd at least stop the growth in this negative net salvage value depreciation expense. Any guidance or thoughts, understanding you're bound to support the settlement agreement?
Yeah, I think with that caveat and listening to the discussion you had earlier, I think that, at least the way I understand it, within the depreciation expense, when it's collected, part of it is put into the life account, part of it into the cost of removal account. And it sounded like you're wanting to essentially reduce $30 million from that cost of removal collection, shift it into the life. And I don't know if you necessarily have to accelerate depreciation to do that, other than just saying, of the X million dollars you collect, here's how we want it split between those two accounts, so that the total amount is unchanged.
All right. So you think the idea is potentially sound, but would just clarify the language I'm using about how I characterize it. Is that a fair characterization of your statement, testimony?
Yeah, I think so.
Actually, one more question, just on customer contributions in aid of construction. There's been a couple examples where new residential developments caused new regulator stations to be built, and those costs got socialized over all customers. Again, with a full understanding that you would not advocate for this or support it, if the commission wanted to try and close that loophole with regulators, do you have any guidance or thoughts about trying to do that in this case?
Yeah, I think in that instance, it's something that I haven't really fully explored. Like, how often is that happening? We have a couple
every rate
examples.
case, apparently.
There's definitely some projects that come up where that is the case, but I I don't know how many new business projects are ongoing where that doesn't happen. And I think part of what would give me pause about doing it here now is if we're implementing the gas capacity infrastructure fee, we're taking a big step in this case of like the cost, the upfront cost that a requesting customer is going to see. And so if I'm thinking about kind of a gradualism approach on shifting these costs from existing customers to the new customer, that might be one additional cost that is pretty drastic in the cases where it shows up. So trying to stick to some gradualism of shifting those costs. And I think the methodology that we laid out for the gas capacity infrastructure fee, it's not, being adopted in the settlement. That can be revisited in later cases, but I think that would set up something that could incorporate the regulator stations or the specific pieces of equipment that you are interested in with that new tariff language. So that I think could be something we investigate down the line.
Ms. Mandel, redirect.
Yes, very briefly, Chair Blank. Mr. Kinney, when you were responding to the chairman's proposals with regard to the PIM, the 5 points, in response, you mentioned the complications of interactions, and 2 specifics that you mentioned were the gas capacity infrastructure fee and increased use of NPAs based on the settlement agreement. And of course, we understand that WRA and Sierra Club support the settlement agreement without modification. But with regard to those 2 items that you mentioned, can you explain how those might affect the efficacy of the PIM?
Sure. I think most generally, if let's just say for the gas capacity infrastructure fee, if the company had forecast in its capital expenditures $100 million of new business, and that is what goes into the baseline for a PIM success or reward or penalty, but we then move all those costs into the fee, it may look like the company is not expensing anything for new business and could potentially be rewarded for those reduced costs. Similar for an NPA, if they're directed to pursue an NPA when they were expecting to spend, capital expenditure dollars on a capital project, a traditional gas project, it's not to say that we don't want them to do the NPA, but that we just want to understand if that NPA is going to be considered a capital expenditure, how does it interact, or is it not considered a capital expenditure? So I think just getting that clarity would be important, so that way we can fully understand the baseline that we're measuring the company's success or failure against.
I have no further questions. Thank you so much, Mr. Kinney.
Mr. Kinney, you may be excused. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Gardner, are you out there?
I sure am.
Do you understand that you're still under oath?
I do, thank you.
Commissioner Goman, questions on the new exhibit? I can't remember the number.
I think they might want to move it in first.
Sorry, Ms. Brahma.
Yeah, thank you. Chair Blank, the company would move for admission hearing exhibit 163, both the public and non-public versions.
Any objections from the parties? Hearing none, so moved.
Okay. I think I can go now.
Yeah, sorry, Commissioner Gilman. It's been a long few days.
Ms. Kunkel, if we can pull up hearing exhibit 163 that was just put in the record, and the public version is just fine. First of all, thank you for preparing this, and apologies if you also had to re-put on a tie for this situation. Yeah.
All good.
Okay.
I was able to find a different tie this time, but
Okay, great. I have stuff too. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we see the Keystone Hotel IP reinforcement. And I understood from your rebuttal testimony there were these kind of two parts of the project in order to serve it. And it seems though the second one, the PM reinforcement, was not originally known, was needed. Let me know if I mischaracterized that, but tell me what is the difference? What's the IP reinforcement? What's the PM reinforcement?
yeah. So IP is the intermediate pressure. So if you think about this from the reg station discussion that we were having on Monday, the intermediate pressure portion is upstream of the reg station, and the pounds medium portion is downstream of the regulator station. So the pounds medium portion was known about, but I think what you're referring to is that in the GIP, that only the intermediate pressure portion was included, and that was some of our discussion about the idea of having the whole project together in the GIP, and that was definitely our understanding, and it was inadvertently not included together. But in this filing, and we really tried to show the entirety of the project to align that.
Okay, got it. And then I just wanted to go over some kind of comparisons between what's shown here and what's in your rebuttal testimony, as well as your direct testimony. We do have those available, I think. If you want us to flip back and forth, we can do so. So just let me know. But in your rebuttal testimony on page 39, you had said that the original budget for the IP reinforcement portion of the project was $51 million. And that was on page 11, or sorry, page 39, line 11.
I think that was 5.1.
Correct. Did
Yeah.
I misstate that? Sorry about that. Okay, so it basically says that the original budget was $5.1 million. And was that for the, and that looks like it's specific to the IP project or portion of the project. So I'm a little confused between what's in your rebuttal as $5.1 million as the original budget for the IP reinforcement versus what we see here, which is 3.2.
Yeah, so can we pull up the hearing exhibit 163 again real quick, and then I think I can just talk through that, and I think that will help provide some clarity.
Okay.
So from a timeline perspective, and forgive me, I'm gonna kind of go through the whole timeline here because I think that will help explain the delta. So from the timeline perspective, we got the original application for service in 2019, in specifically October of 2019. And then from the period of 2019 to 2022, we were working with that customer, really going back and forth. There was also obviously the COVID pandemic there. And so obviously building a hotel in 2020 wasn't a super popular idea. So that drove a lot of delay from the customer side. And then, but really through our normal process in that period, we were working with that customer to really understand exactly what load they were actually going to be bringing on the system. So if you think about it from a perspective of the customer comes with what they think their load would be, we spend a lot of time with them understanding what appliances do they actually, how many units do they plan to have, both, in this case, condos and hotel rooms. What are the appliances that they plan to have? What appliances are going to be running at the same times? In this case, they actually made the decision to move to to electric fireplaces instead of gas fireplaces in individual units. And so we were able to work with them to bring their load down a little bit. And then in 2022 is when we actually had a signed contract with the customer on, and that's what's reflected here in Hearing Exhibit 163. As we progressed in that project, we continued to refine that estimate. And so I don't remember the exact language in my rebuttal testimony as far as the 5.1, but the reality is the 5.1 was representative of an estimate that was developed there before the project went to construction. And so what you're seeing is the maturity of a cost estimate from the time that it was issued to the customer initially to a more engineered estimate that actually was put together before construction. So that's as you kind of progress through the process, that's why you're seeing that delta.
Okay, so you're saying the 3.2 that we're seeing here, which is kind of the top leftist number, was what was provided to the customer, and that was essentially at an earlier stage than the 5.1 million, which was once you had more engineering done on the project.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Sorry, let me just see. And then on the in your testimony, you also say on page 40 that the PM reinforcement cost estimate was approximately 1.8 million, but here you say it's 1.6 million. Is that the same issue?
It's a combination of that, as well as I believe in this case there may have been a little bit of betterment that was into the cost estimate. And so the cost estimate that goes to the customer doesn't include any betterment that would be on behalf of the company. So that can be things like if the pipeline that we're tying into needs, say additional cathodic protection anodes or something like that, that they might be added as betterment to the project, because it would make sense if you're digging up that section of pipe that you would make some, if there's things that need to be done to it, you would do it while you're there from an efficiency standpoint versus, coming back and digging the same hole again later.
Okay, got it. So this amounts to, in your rebuttal testimony, you had said the total project cost estimate was 6.9 million, but here it adds up to 4.8 million, just to summarize what we're talking about.
Yeah, so that is reflective of what's in my rebuttal would be a more mature cost estimate than what we're looking at right here. The estimate that we quote to the customer, kind of from a matter of process, is the customer makes a request that's very much based on the load. And so there wouldn't be any engineering, there'd be no geotechs, none of that work would go into it. It is simply okay, we're building a pipeline from point A to point B. And so it's going to be based more on things like cost per foot, things like that to quote the customer, because we don't have any investment in engineering or anything like that at that stage.
Okay. And at what point was that cost estimate provided to the customer? Which date?
So it would be, when they initially made a request, we would quote the customer back in like 2019. But what happens is that if they don't respond and agree to sign a contract to that quote and pay, then that quote then basically expires. And so you kind of continue this iterative process, and really, frankly, working with that customer until you reach a contract point. And so in this case, that contract point, the IP and the pounds medium project estimate quotes were provided to the customer in November of 22. And then we got signatures on the contract and payment by December of 22.
Okay, got it. And then just by contrast, so here we have 4.8 million in this cost estimate. You update that, I think, in June 2024 and get a new cost estimate of 6.9 million. Is that right?
Yeah, so the process then is once we have a signed contract from the customer, at that point we know the project is moving forward. We move forward with engineering on it and start engineering, and then at the appropriate time in the engineering process, we would start the permit process. And so we would continue that leading up to construction. So in this case, the Forest Service permit took almost 2 years to get in place to build it. And then we started construction in July of 24.
Okay. And then just to confirm, the final actual cost of the project was about $8.4 million.
It is, I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I think what we're talking about through end of December 25, so collecting all with those in-service dates, I was thinking it was 7.3, but I don't remember 7.3 or 8.4. I can't remember.
So it's in hearing exhibit 117 ARG4, which is kind of the detail on this project in particular. We can pull it up, but it lists the project cost estimate there in the top right-hand corner of 8.386.
Yeah, and then the additions is 7.3. So there we go. Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah, but it sounds like, I mean, you kind of say on this hearing exhibit 163 that the additions is not accurate because the customer contribution is not accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. But the 8.386 is accurate.
So that would have been that final project estimate. And then I believe, if my math is good here, the way that the additions would add would be, it would be the 7.3, we're missing the 2.2 in third-party contribution here. And so in this exhibit, so what the additions would actually be roughly 5.1 million in additions. So if you kind of add that back to your point, the total project cost ends up being 8.3 if you're, depending on how you factor the third-party contribution, right?
Right, I'm meaning
You follow
total,
that math.
total.
It's a little bit,
Yeah.
it's a little bit tricky because we're dealing with additions and expenses, but it gets us in the right ballpark. So I think
Right.
I'm landing on relatively close of the roughly 8.3.
Okay. And that was still an estimate on attachment ARG4. Is there an actual at this point in time that is
So
the
that-
actual total cost?
That's the additions number that's right there, the 7.3. So it would be that minus the other kayak payment that's shown in a hearing exhibit 163. So it'd be, the additions would be the 7,342,966 minus the other customer contribution of 2,279,994.
Okay, I guess the clarification I'm asking is the number in the top right here still says estimate. Is that in fact an actual, like that is actually what's spent and the project's done, or it's still an estimate?
No, that was the estimate. And then the additions is the actual, because that represents what actually went in service.
Okay. And do you know that number?
So that the additions is the 7.3. So to get to the total additions for the project, it would be the 7.3, 7,342,966 plus 1,062,878. And that would get you, I mean, it's going to be rough, but it's going to be a little bit rough because we're adding additions. We're kind of working in that world of additions and expenses.
Okay. I
But-
think we're talking past each other a little. I'm just
Okay.
trying to figure out, this says estimate on the top line. Is that actually what the total project cost, or is it really an estimate?
No, that is an estimate.
Okay.
And then yeah, I'll stop.
Okay. Okay, so the 163 that was submitted today, that doesn't have any actual costs on it. Those are all these 2022 estimates, right?
So this hearing exhibit 163 was really put together to try and explain how we got to that kayak payment amount and kind of why we landed where we did.
Okay.
So I think, important to consider when we look at this, if you look at like the tariff change that the company brought forward, in this case was really allows for like the engineering costs. The cost of engineering is to go to the customer. So basically, if you were to do this today, what you would do is you'd quote the customer, and then you would, at the customer's expense, go through additional engineering to get you to that later estimate that you were looking at. And then includes like a true up provision at the end, because there's full recognition of that delta, and that these projects like this that are very complex, and specifically that the construction is very complex, that they're very difficult to estimate on the front side without any additional work. It's kind of that, as you know, the mountain construction piece and the variables that come with that are always challenging.
Okay. And then the kayaks that were paid here, the two of them, 2.3 million and 1.1 million roughly. Those were paid in 2022. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, yes. December
Okay.
of 2022.
Okay. And then let me just see. Okay, so you're saying then there are changes provided now to the line extension policy that would allow for a true up. Clearly here we've gotten almost doubling of project costs.
Yes, so the tariff, sorry, I'll let you finish.
No, go ahead. Tell me kind of where that is, if you can, and
Yeah, I'm gonna need some help on the exact reference, probably from my counsel, but there is a revision to the tariff sheet. Is it T61 maybe, if I remember, if my memory is good, but what it is it's a change to the tariff that allows us to basically take a project like this, the recognition that it's complex, and then say, okay, we need to move forward with more engineering before we have an agreed upon amount that the customer would pay. And so the customer would pay for that additional engineering to refine that estimate. And so I would say it transfers, it delays that kayak payment, but in doing so causes the customer to take that financial risk instead of the company. So the engineering cost to get to a more refined estimate would be paid at the applicant's expense.
okay. And then the thought is that in a situation like this, we've kind of got three stages of costs, right? We've got the first estimate, then we've got the 2024 estimate, which went up quite a bit from there. And then we have the actual cost that went up from there. So is your understanding under the new proposed process, they would pay for the engineering to get the better estimate. And then they would pay a kayak based upon which of those project costs? First estimate, second estimate, or actual cost?
So they would pay for the engineering to get to the refined estimate. They would pay a kayak, and they'd pay a kayak on that updated estimate, but then they would true up to that final actual cost.
Okay. And is this something that was prohibited in the company's prior distribution line extension policy and tariffs?
So I'll caveat my answer by saying I'm definitely not the line extension policy expert, but my understanding of the line extension policy that was in place really at this time is that the line extension policy didn't really have a true up provision in it. So in the absence of, when we sign a contract with a customer that doesn't include a true up provision, then we're really bound to that contract, which then, to your point, really effectively prohibits the true up of cost in a project such as this. But we are going back to, this is, prior extension policy, obviously, but
Right.
that customer contract and the point of contract is really drives that inability to true up the cost at this stage.
Okay. So to your understanding, the changes you are proposing now would allow for a true up all the way through the actual costs
That is my understanding, correct.
Okay. And so just to put it all together, what we have here is basically a customer contribution of $3.3 million on a total project cost in actuality of $8.4 million. And so we're just shy of about 40% of the project cost that was paid by the customer.
Yes, that is my understanding, yes.
Okay. And under the line extension policy at the time, understanding, true up provision or not aside, the customer would be responsible, absent any construction allowance, for about 72% of the improvements needed in this
Yeah.
situation.
Yes, the line extension policy that was in place at the time, they would have been responsible for, so again, minus any construction allowance. So in this case, the way that works is they would get the project estimate, you reduce that estimate by the construction allowance, and then you take 20%, 28% of that number, and that's what gets you to the customer contribution. So like you said, roughly the 72% is kind of the target. So I think in this case, if you run the numbers, it ends up close to, when you factor out that construction allowance, it ends up being roughly 70% of that initial project estimate is what that 3.3
That
represents.
the customer would be responsible for.
So in this case, yes, that's what that's their 3.3 ended up at roughly 70% of that initial project estimate.
Which is less than 40% of the actual project cost.
Which is less than 4, yes.
Okay. So in the end, they, as it turned out, they paid about 40% of the actual project cost.
Yes.
Okay. So in your, okay, so when you say in your rebuttal testimony, the project cost estimate was compiled and updated in June 2024, that is a totally different estimate than was provided to the customer. I was a little confused by that in the 2022 reference.
Yes, that is an updated estimate that would have been refined based on the engineering work that would have occurred from basically the engineering and permitting that would have occurred between November of 2022 and 2024. So there's a 2-year period there, or roughly a little under 2 years, 18 months, where work was being done to engineer the project, permit the project, and get the full understanding of what was going to actually need to be done. And so that's what drove the updated cost estimate.
Okay. Oh, sorry. And then I understand in this case, the line extension policy, as you're saying in this exhibit, didn't actually change between 2019 and 2022. But just to eliminate any confusion on my part, what would the company consider the date that is operative here as far as what line extension policy they would be bound by? Their 2019 contact or the 2022 date when they were given the estimate and signed?
So in this specific case, and these, as we talked about before, these are always interesting to sort out, but in this specific case, it would be that 2022 line extension policy because, in this case, it's the same. But if you walked through this process, the way that this would go, if the applicant applied in 2019, and then let's say for hypotheticals that they didn't pay, they basically sat on that estimate. After 60 days, we would really expire that quotation to them. And so then, especially if you see like a change in line extension policy, then we would require them to reapply before we quote them again, which would then drive them to that more updated line extension policy. So
okay. I have a question on that kind of in the scheme of your proposed changes, which would be that they pay for the upfront engineering. And so then they're getting a more mature price estimate. So let's say they pay for the engineering, you give them the more mature price estimate and they don't sign within 60 days. Do you have to do like another round of engineering to make sure it's up to date if other things have been added and changing on the system? And in that case, they pay for another engineering review?
I mean, we're on the caveat that we're working in a hypotheticals. I would say yes. So, and I think that's where that true up clause really helps be that kind of final final gate to make sure everything is aligned. But my expectation would be that if they pay for the engineering and then they don't actually agree to that kayak, then we would, and then basically they sat on it. Let's say they sat on it for a year, right? We would then come back and we would have to essentially refresh all of that. So they would have to most likely pay for more engineering to make sure, and look at the system, say, okay, does this all still work before we would move forward?
Okay. And then the only thing that's confidential here, those two little black boxes, I'm not going to bring up a number, but I was just curious. This shows customer applied load in decatherms. Is that an annual number?
So that is, I think that's an hourly number. And that would be based, but the process is that they provide that number, and then it has a multiplier for that construction allowance that then drives what the actual construction allowance is.
Okay. So you think that's a peak hourly, like peak design day contribution, basically, to load?
I believe so, but I'm not positive on that.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't know. You would know. Okay. And then to your understanding, is that after you had said you worked with the customer quite a bit to refine the estimates, they changed out appliances, whatever, you think this is the final that the actual project was built for?
Yes. So the decatherm load here translates to, I think in my testimony, we talked about it being a rate of like 38 M was the peak hour, really was what they initially requested. And then we worked with them and brought that down to 31. So I would say the positive side of that is that that's nearly a 20% reduction in load versus what they originally were looking at, which 7,000 M is you're talking roughly 90, it'd be the equivalency of like fully electrifying 90 homes, which is a pretty significant reduction. And that's really why we spend that time with the customer on the front side. Obviously, this was before NPAs or anything like that, but this is, part of normal course of business was to really work with them to make sure that we understand and align the load appropriately with what they're actually building.
Okay. And in that case, is the construction allowance based on the first number they came to you with, or what you understand the real load to be after those discussions?
The real load after those discussions. So it would be the construction allowance was based on the lower number that we worked with them to refine to.
Okay. I'll have to go back and cross-reference that. I'm not sure if that's what I'm seeing here, but we'll take a look. And I presume you have actual loads on this property now. They've been in service since October 2024.
They are in service. So yes, it is it's a very nice resort, but yes.
Okay. Sorry, let me see this one. So I know you had brought up in the ARG4, it only lists the one customer contribution. It seems like one is missing. I will just note though, that number is repeated 3 times in that exhibit, that I guess incorrect number. I was curious too, I have oddly been looking at this project in other rate case files. Do you happen to know the project ID for this, or can I verify the project ID for this project with you?
I don't know the number off the top of my head. I know the project name has had various iterations. It's kind of reflective of that initial 2019 request to 2022 contract, which I believe was in terms of, I think it's been, One River Run. I think it's been Keystone Hotel. I think it's been Hunky Dory. It's been called a few different things over time. So, but I don't know a project ID number off the top of my head.
Okay, so the project ID I found was E.5082.001, and that's the Hunky Dory. So that's the one that I've found in there, and capital additions add up to just shy of $8 million through 2025 in that one. And so for that project ID, I have not seen in any of the capital additions in this rate case or in the previous any kind of negative values that would indicate a customer contribution. Do you know where I can see that in like the capital addition documents, neither this rate case or prior?
I don't know that. I unfortunately, I can speak to the project, but the financials and where it shows up in the cost of service specifically, I couldn't tell you that.
Okay. So we did, I mean, that project ID does show up in the 2024 rate case, which I've looked at the capital additions for, which is one of your exhibits. It's ARG1 hearing exhibit 105 in the 2024 gas rate case. It doesn't show anything positive or negative occurring in 2022, which I think is the year that the customer contributions came in. So I'm just trying to kind of track this information, and I have not been able to find it. So I wasn't sure if you'd be able to better direct me as to where I could likely see these customer contributions coming in the capital additions.
Yeah, unfortunately, I unfortunately don't know. I know from talking with our team, I know that, and specifically like Witness Freitas, I know that the kayak payment did come through in the cost of service, but I don't know exactly where it's reflected in the cost of service.
To my understanding, those generally come through in the cost of service by decreasing the capital additions in the capital addition kind of worksheets, right?
They typically would, and I think the challenge with this one is I'm not sure that the 2.3 piece actually netted against that capital addition, but is in the general cost of service. And I just don't know where to point you to within that cost of service calculation on exactly where that is.
What would kind of be the difference on why one thing would occur sometimes and something another time? Like I thought pretty regularly the customer contributions just appeared as negatives or netted against the capital addition.
They would typically, and it depends some on the timing on when the kayak payment comes in. I know that. And as far as kind of how that process is through our system and exactly how it's, everything from how the customer flags it when they make the payment all the way through to kind of where it lands and the timing on when we run cost of service. So I unfortunately, I'm definitely not the finance expert to talk to exactly the why this one didn't land exactly that way, but I why the entirety of it didn't net against the project in the table, but I do know that it was reflected. I unfortunately don't know where.
Okay, let me just show you what I have just so you know where I'm looking. Ms. Kunkel, if you can pull up, I think you had pre-marked it, but I've just got the capital additions, your attachment from the 2024 gas rate case. So I'll show you where I was looking and why I was confused. And I will say for clarity, it's not that I'm not seeing the entirety of it come in. I'm not seeing any of it. I don't see any negative there. And it does show 2022 actuals, and it shows actuals through the end of September 2023 in the 2024 direct rate case filing.
Sorry, all of a sudden my screen's just flashed. Give me a second.
Okay. Oh yeah, it's tiny. It's on page 4. It's like the 8th line is that project. You can see it hunky dory in all caps, like the 8th line. So that's where I was looking, and this one just has no actuals, either cost or negative for 2022 or the majority of 2023, which is shown. So I'm just trying to figure out kind of where I can see it or figure that information out. Sorry, it's kind of an eye chart here.
As long as you don't ask me if it's better 1 versus better 2.
I promise you it's just a dash for 2022 and the first 3 quarters of 2023. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking, I'm understanding this to come in 2022, but I don't see it anywhere. So it would be helpful to just understand that. I know we're on the last day of the hearing, but just trying to understand this, and I suppose I should be able to track it on some of these documents, and I just haven't been able to.
Yeah, I know we did receive the payment in December of 22, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know exactly where it shows up.
Okay. I think those are my only questions, Chairman. Thanks.
It just, I'm not sure I followed everything, but let me just ask you one question on this, Mr. Gardner. If this project was filed January 1st, 2027, and the exact same thing played out under the tariff where supported by the settlement agreement, if it were approved by us, would this customer pay the full cost of the project under the new tariff, given the true-up provisions?
Assuming that the tariff modification that the company proposed as part of our direct testimony was adopted, then yes, that they would pay the full amount, because they'd pay for the engineering for the estimate, and then they'd pay their kayak payment on the refined estimate, and then there would be a true up at the end of the project to ensure that they paid the entirety of the project.
And you waffled a little bit in your conversation with Commissioner Gilman. Was that just because of the timing of this particular customer? But going forward, if this was filed January 1st, 2028, there's no waffling or uncertainty. This customer would pay 100% of the cost of the project.
No, it was definitely not. Waffling was not intended. My intent was not that at all. It was that I think I was just trying to process my words and articulate correctly that there is a true up of the customer pays the engineering, the customer pays a kayak after that engineering, and then the customer pays a true up at the end.
Okay. Ms. Brahma, I think we're gonna close the record in the next 5 or 10 minutes, but can we make an exception where you'll file something answering Commissioner Gilman's questions regarding that last document you showed?
We're happy to look into that. I just don't have an answer as I sit here, right now it's top of my head as
No,
to
I know.
where it's going to be or how we would do that. But we are happy to look into it, and maybe there's the time frame in the next day or so, and we could file something if needed, or assuming we cannot. I know I have heard from our folks as well that the dollars are there. Finding the individual line item is not something I can speak to any more than Mr. Gardner can.
Of course. So if you could just, when you prepare that document, run it by the parties and then file something that lets us know what the party said. And we'll hold the record open subject, we'll close the record subject to that one potential addition. Any final comments from go ahead.
I do have some redirect questions.
Oh, sorry.
I will keep it short, though. I know everybody wants to be done here today. Just in the interest of speeding things along, if I may, I can just point out where that true up language exists in the record. I thought that might be helpful.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah, it was proposed in the company's direct case as part of the red lines. It was not contested in the course of the case. And it appears in hearing exhibit 102, which is the direct testimony of company witness Carolyn Lee, attachment CAL6, which is our red line for all tariff changes. And on page 2 of 38, that's sheet number R61. So page 2 of 38 of hearing exhibit 102, attachment CAL6. And at the very bottom of that page is the true up language to which Mr. Gardner is referring.
Thank you.
And Mr. Gardner, just in terms of redirect, I don't think we need to pull it up. I just wanted to make sure the record is very clear. Obviously, the Keystone Hotel is a different time frame, different tariffs. If you were to have a customer come in now with the true up in effect, would the customer pay the full amount of their share of the project?
Yes, they would.
Okay. Could you just briefly address, in this case, why it was necessary to reestimate the project cost after the contract signed and permitting had occurred in this case?
Yeah, so in this case, we had a Forest Service permit that took nearly 2 years to get. And part of that permit came with stipulations on where and how we could actually construct the project. So for example, it dictated a very limited use area when we were boring the pipe under Highway 6, which required deeper bore pits and a unique drilling method, such that we didn't have room to string out the pipe in front of the bore. We had to take it essentially pipe joint by pipe joint to put it in, which requires a much more expensive and complicated boring method. And then further, the Colorado Department of Transportation required us to do a directional drill adjacent to Highway 6 rather than open trench it, which is what we had requested. And unfortunately, in this case, it wasn't until we had multiple failed bore attempts that they did concede and allow us to open trench next to the highway.
And was so is it fair to say that the estimate that was provided to the customer was based on what you knew of their load, and changes were driven by construction issues, not by necessarily customer load changes?
Yes, the changes to the project were around the constructability of the project, not on the actual scope or not on load changes.
And was the company's construction estimate based on the best information the company had at the time about the expected load for that customer?
Yes, it was.
Were you able to tie out the customer contribution amounts shown in hearing exhibit 163 to the customer contract, identifying their kayak requirements?
Yes. Yes, it lines up exactly with the customer contract.
Okay. And is it your understanding that that the contract with the Keystone Hotel owners complied with the tariff in effect at the time the contract was signed with respect to both the terms and conditions of line extension policy and also the dollar share to be borne by the customer?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Brahma. Mr. Gardner, you may be excused. I think this time you can put away the suit.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any additions to the legal assistance, Ms. Kunkel? Any questions about exhibits, or does council have any questions about the record exhibits, Ms. Brahma?
No questions about the record or exhibits at this time. We did want to just briefly touch base on the statements of position. And I think the company would request that we have 35 pages, just a brief additional amount for this hearing in light of the settlement, but there are some complex issues raised.
Yeah, that's fine. And I'll talk about the date in a second. Mr. Judd.
Apologies, and my video is not working, so apologies. Just a note on the record, we are trying to file the revised testimony of Mr. Russo, given the edits to the settlement agreement, just getting some errors on the PUC website when we do. So just if you can either just note that we'll file it as soon as we can, or just make a note that we're trying to get that in as soon as we can, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I know we're having problems with e-filings today. If you could just run it by the parties and make sure they don't have any concerns about the final record, and when you file it, you can represent what you heard from the parties, that'd be great. Were you going to say it different, Ms. Brahma?
No, I was just going to note that we had not seen it yet, so we would need to be able to see that to identify whether we have any concerns about those sections or not.
Well,
Okay.
there should, but I mean, I guess, I don't want the fact that I can't file it to create additional problems, right? Because that's a technical limitation outside of our control. This is as a direct result of, your settlement, revisions and nothing else. And I
I'm
can,
not, yeah, no, that's fine. They could be emailed, it could be put in box.com. We just need to have a chance to take a look at it. That's all I'm suggesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, yeah, we can send it around, by email. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, we'll do. Apologies for that technical glitch, but
No, that's
appreciate the
fine.
accommodation.
Yeah, that's on our side. No worries. I'd propose, council proposes with little flexibility, statement of positions due August 14th, 2026. End of day, we'll have a 35-page limit. Does that work for people?
I
Ms.
think that
Bala?
would be fine for the company. I just was conferring really quickly with my colleagues, but I think we'll be all right.
Anybody else want to opine? If council can turn on their cameras for a final closing of the record, I just want to thank everybody for all the work on the settlement agreement and for an engaging couple of days conversation. Thanks to the legal assistance and counsel. Commissioner Plant, any final comments?
No, just echo those the appreciation to everybody for your hard work on the case.
Commissioner Gumman.
Yeah, same. I appreciate y'all, and thanks to Ms. Kunkel, Ms. Federico for keeping us going behind the scenes pretty smooth as usual.
Ms. Rosati, unless you have anything else, nope. That concludes the presentation of evidence in the case, with the one exception we discussed. With that exception, the evidentiary record is now closed and the hearing's adjourned. Thanks all. Have a good week.
Thank you.